Run for Your Life, usually seen at this time, will not be presented tonight, so that we may bring you the following special program.
Please support the Word Balloon podcast by going to patreon.com/wordballoon. Become a part of the League of Word Balloon listeners. That's patreon.com/wordballoon. Welcome back, everybody. It's time again for Word Balloon, the comic book conversation show. John Suntress with you. Happy to welcome back two of my favorite writers, Jackson Lanzing and Collin Kelly. Welcome, boys. Good to see you.
Thanks for having us. I love it when we can start an interview immediately talking at the same time. We're doing it great.
It's really great. Good to see you, John. Happy to be here.
And thrilled to have you guys. Man, you guys are killing it, both in Marvel and IDW. And hey, if people want to talk about DC work that you've done as well, happy to do that as well. But I'm thrilled with what you guys are doing right now. Now I'm going to start with the one that I know least about, and that's NYX.
Nice.
And you know, it's great that you guys are. I'm glad they brought it back. Loved it when Quesada first introduced the idea. Jesus, 25 years ago, whatever the hell it was. But tell me about the lineup. Kamala Khan and young X-23 are there, but tell me who else is in the team.
So NYX really came off as a natural evolution out of the last several years of the X-Men line, right? John Hickman and the whole Krakoan era came in and really shook up the X-Men in a pretty dramatic way. And the biggest way they did that was that they gave them a homeland. And obviously that's been done before. We've had Genosha and we've had Asteroid M and we've had Utopia. But this felt different. I think because it felt so specifically in the framework of a kind of separatist movement, of a movement that was designed to say, we're not simply creating a nation to protect ourselves and function within a human context, but we're creating a nation and then we're going to just operate entirely in a mutant context and humans have to keep up with us. And so for a few years there, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, and perhaps more importantly, kind of seize onto mutant excellence, right? Yeah. It was really about actualizing and really living up to their full potential without this little kind of view over their shoulder of we have to fit in. And that created a really special time for mutants, which R.I.P. Krakoa, as it did vanish out of this reality, not destroyed, but simply going on a indefinite vacation into an extra dimension, kind of leaving with all the mutants who decided to not leave with Krakoa on Earth back here with a giant Krakoan-sized hole in their lives and in their culture.
And this means that, suddenly you don't have language, you don't have culture, you don't have defense, you don't have your homeland at all. And suddenly the X-Men, we thought it was a really ripe place to explore, which was how do you then take the X-Men and play with the concept of diaspora? What is Krakoan diaspora? What does it mean for these people to be out there again and having to live among humans? And so while a lot of the core X books were either going to move on from a framework of not really being concerned with Krakoa or really being concerned with having been radicalized by Krakoa in the case of Jen McKay's X-Men, or really just setting new places and tones like in Gale's Uncanny or in Eve's Extraordinary? That's wrong.
Astonishing?
Exceptional. Sorry. Exceptional X-Men.
Oh, exceptional.
Because of that, and we sort of had these three silos that we're playing, and we came in and we were asked to pitch whatever we wanted. And we said, what we really want to do is a book about X-Men living, mutants, not really X-Men, living in human society. What does it mean for them to be back in a human city, living among humans, having to figure out what it means to reintegrate or not reintegrate, how to stand for what they believe in or not stand for what they believe in, how their language works, how their technology works, how all the stuff that they learned at Krakoa continues now into the real world. There's a real conversation between this idea of I recently became aware of this Pan-African concept of I think it's Quillandismo, which was effectively this idea that in order to properly live properly live like in the world in your own way, oppressed peoples had to live fundamentally separate because the world was built around oppressing them. And so if they didn't live fundamentally separately, if they didn't quite literally close themselves off to the world and live entirely in their own context, they would be inherently oppressed. And I think that conversation is effectively the one that we've been having throughout NYX. It's by living in human society, are we inherently now becoming part of our own oppression? Are we becoming part of a community that is designed to destroy us? Or can we build something new with mutants and humans together in that context? And I think, our books tend to skew towards the optimistic. They tend to skew towards the idealistic. We come from like hippie parents and very like optimistic backgrounds. We have a lot of hope for the world, even when the world doesn't showcase a lot of hope. And so NYX was a place, I think, for us to have some hard conversations about that, and ultimately, ideally, direct some hope towards these characters that would feel very hopeless at the beginning of issue 1.
But to kind of circle around to your original question, yes, we have Laura. We have Laura X-23, who comes kind of as the legacy character from the original NYX run. We have David Elaine, Prodigy, as kind of a new kind of Professor X, as he is not leading an X-Men team, but is rather building an X community, a mutant community in New York City. We have Anole, who is one of my favorite characters, just a little green guy who has always just tried to be, to live his own life. In Krakoa, he was just a bartender. Here in New York, he's trying to do the same thing. Does not want to be a hero, just wants to live, but that's very difficult when you're green with one giant lizard arm. And we have Sophie Cuckoo, kind of separated out from her hive mind sisters for the first time, carving out her own role and really kind of finding her own life. And of course, kind of at the core of this story, we have a character who is authentically one of the newest of mutants, which is Kamala Khan, a character who we love deeply and who has a real history of kind of taking on and being a part of marginalized identities, finding her way towards living that authentically. And suddenly she's been plunged into the term mutant, right? Suddenly she is a mutant on top of everything else that she has always been. What does that mean for her? How does she engage with this community? And kind of what does that, how does that evolve and grow as she kind of is our lens character into this new phase of the mutant diaspora? As our kind of lens, as her journey, she provides our kind of core as this story, though every issue really does kind of lens in on a different character. Once again, not a team book. It's got some bitchin' explosions, 100%. They do kick a lot of ass, but that is not the point of this story. This is always going to be a story about people trying to find their way in a dangerous world.
We also really found that it was a great opportunity to do isolated, individualized storytelling, which is something that we've spent a lot of time over the last few years honing and emphasizing and really trying to push. Comics are such a unique medium in this regard, right? That every 22 pages, 20 pages, whatever, you're going to get a full story. And that felt like something that we really wanted to bring to NYX. Take a book where every issue could pivot around and look at different characters and deep dive into their world. So issue 8, which just came out, is a deep dive on this character, Julian Keller, who hasn't had a proper spotlight probably like 7 or 8 years of comics. There he is right there. And Julian has had a really hard life as a mutant. He's had a really hard life as a character. He's been forgotten about a lot. He's been kicked to the side a lot. And he's been one of those characters that we've been really interested in playing with for a long time. So coming back around to him, getting a chance to showcase his depth of character, that has been an incredible joy. Hey, look, it's Jeff Thorne. What up, Jeff Thorne?
I didn't put 2 and 2 together. Hey, Jeff, how you doing, man? You got to come on Word Balloon again. It's been far too long, man. I love Jeff's a great writer.
There you go. Another guy on the X train, whose book is like NYX. X Force is also coming to an end. So we're both on the train out of X land right now. Well, to some degree, I guess we're on a new train into a different part of X land.
That's excellent, man. Oh, and everyone's being nice, and there we go. Thorne's smiling at us. Excellent, James. Very nice. That's great, guys. And truly, my older relatives had that same kind of immigrant culture clash, and a couple of my relatives really were insular, really stayed within the Greek community in Chicago, never acclimated. Oh, really? And Jackson, forgive me. What's your
Greek community up in Connecticut and Boston? I'm second generation Greek, so
me too.
My grandparents came in. My mother was the first person in our family to speak English and integrate with any kind of space like that. So,
man. Boys, when you're in next time you're in Chicago and stuff, I'll take you to Greektown. We gotta
genuinely, I was there yesterday. I came back yesterday. I didn't have I had no free time. I didn't see any of my friends. It was me and my wife hitting the city as hard as we could for 3 days. But I will be back. And when I do, John, we got to go to Greektown.
All right. Beautiful, man. No, that's great. Excellent, man. No, I know.
Yeah. The Lanzing,
I didn't realize you're Greek. That's fantastic.
The Lanzing hides the true identity. My mom's last name is Chuckamakopoulos.
The hell with the Irish, Collin. I'm sorry, but someone's got to lose. I understand.
All we ever do is lose.
Hey, by the way, and listen, you guys work in the Star Trek world.
Yeah.
But that Section 31 movie, oof, and that robot Vulcan with the Irish accent, Collin, please help me, because truly, and I wasn't offended, but I'm like, am I watching a Lucky Charms commercial? Jesus, what the hell is this guy thinking?
Language evolves over the several centuries as it changes, and robots can't exactly replicate the way people talk. That's impossible.
Let's put it on the floor that we have a professional obligation to Star Trek to not talk too much about that. But what I will say, I think this is important to note, that if there's one thing worse than the Irish squid driving a robot, it's the Irish squid's inexplicably Southern wife who shows up at the end. I've never wanted to yeet a character out of a piece of fiction harder in my life. I was like, I can't have this character on screen any longer. This character is live, and I immediately want them gone.
And I'll even balance it with, it was a really interesting opportunity to have this microscopic character inside of an android. But hi, I'm a laughing Vulcan, and I'm trying to stay inconspicuous because I'm a spy. What?
Yeah. I thought a lot of great conceptual swings in that show.
Well, and again, there's plenty of positive things.
Exactly.
And last word on NYX, because truly, I don't want to short shrift this,
sure,
but I'm very excited for issue 9, because now we could see Charles deal with Xavier, deal with this group. And that will be very interesting, given this group dynamic and how they react to their mentor.
It's a really interesting. There's two parts of that I think are really fascinating. The first part is that obviously this book has been entirely focused on young characters. Every issue of this book has been about a character who presents 21 or above, or 21 or below, right? And here, issue 9, our second to last issue. So really our last issue with a central character focus. Issue 10, which is the final issue of the book, is just called NYX. And while it does have a central character focus, to talk about that too much would spoil the book. So issue 9 is framed very much at, it's called Charles, the same way all the other books are called, Kamala or Laura or Victor or whatever. And it's an event tie-in. It's a tie-in to X-Manhunt, which is this thing that's going through all of the books. And it's the first time.
And a crossover. I just want to point out that the Hive Mind has achieved the also rare notability of having a double event tie-in issue.
It's true.
It is a One World Under Doom and X-Manhunt double cross.
Oh, see, it's an X.
It's an X. Sometimes we like to challenge ourselves to see how much corporate synergy we can step into.
Turns out, maximum corporate synergy coming to you in NYX number 9.
While still telling a story that's absolutely going to kick ass and set up everything that you need to know for our finale issue 10. So
well, and that was, and I think that's the other part of it, right? So yeah, on the one side, it's really cool because like hopefully some people who don't read NYX who are reading these other books will come into it just to get the X-Manhunt of it all, and that'll be a fun thing. You'll get a taste of what Francesca Mortorino's been doing on that book, which is just beautiful art. I think some of the best art at Marvel. And I think you'll get a really great taste of what the book can be, and you'll get a setup for our finale. But moreover, and this is the part that I thought was really fascinating to do. It's in looking at the whole of the team and all or the community of the characters that we use in NYX. Almost none of them were taught by Charles Xavier. Almost none of them. Hellion, never taught by Charles Xavier. Prodigy, never taught by Charles Xavier. Sync, only in recent years taught by Charles Xavier. Laura, not really, kind of missed Charles Xavier. Kamala Khan, totally missed Charles Xavier. Noel, completely missed Charles Xavier. Like, basically all of these characters became X-Men during a period where Xavier was off the map for some reason or another. He was dead, he was depowered, he was in exile, he was whatever. And so him coming into the NYX context and trying to throw his weight around and be like, you got to do something for me because I'm Xavier. The only real context they have for this guy is Krakoa. You're the guy who started the Mutant Nation and then at the very end of it committed a giant atrocity that let us all down, right? And so that it's this fascinating way to like get to run into Charles's narrative without anybody in the book being like super impressed that Charles is here, right? No one is like, oh my God, Xavier. It's much more like, oh, the troublesome old guy showed up and we're all getting sucked into his stupid drama for a second. Which is it's just a fun way to approach it. It's very different than what would happen if Charles showed up to Scott or Storm or any of the other stuff that people will see in X-Manhunt.
Right.
That's excellent, man. And I appreciate that, and I am curious to see how you guys wrap this up. But my God, the chat is dominated by Star Trek questions, and I'm thrilled with that. And also, you guys know, if you wanted to come on every month and we could just do an update of what you guys are doing in the IDW comics, and Cantwell, the same goes for Cantwell and Ryan as well. I mean, truly, I love what's happening in the IDW books. And so also let me, if a Paramount person happens to be hearing my disparaging comments about Section 31, good news is I'm thrilled with what the guys and women are doing, and Heather Antos leading the pack as the editor of all the IDW Star Trek comics, because you guys are killing it. So I will go right to some of these comments. Like Jared says, incredible Star Trek work you guys are doing. Don't stop. David, hi guys. What would you say proved to be the key to figuring out Kang's voice? My favorite Klingon. I'll let you, and before you answer that,
I have a feeling he's talking about Kang the Conqueror. I think this is all about our.
Oh, excuse me. Of course, your miniseries, of course, which we have talked about in the past, and I absolutely adored. That's
got a quick answer. Kang loves his own voice, and he loves gobbling up scenery. Right? He's just like, oh, can I just fucking chew this? Yum, yum, yum. Like, Doom does it because Doom must. Kang does it because he wants to, baby.
I genuinely think that that is the distinction. Is that Doom comes by it really naturally. Like, Doom is like, it's a thing that has been part of his life his whole life. His arrogance has just kind of driven him there, and he can't help but show how smart he is because he's so fucking smart. And we're getting to play with that in Doomstrike. I mean, the monologue that opens up Thunderbolt's Doomstrike is one of my favorite things we've written in a minute about Sergeant Cheyev. But Kang is a kid who was raised on videos of Doctor Doom, right? It's like these kids who like watch podcasts and then or like listen to podcasts or like watch Rogan or whatever and then like ape the manner of speaking and suddenly become like the metastasized version of that.
Yeah,
that's Kang. Kang is Doom metastasized, which is why it's always so much fun to get the two of them together, right? Because then you get like it's like the original and the copy, but the copy can't stand to be the copy. He hates it. It's great, man. I think the trick to Kang in a lot of ways is writing our worst self. Like, we are two guys who are maybe too smart for our own good and can't stop talking. And it's like, okay, great. Just What's the worst thing you could be? And then just like lean into that.
Well, I loved your guys' Kang series, and
Yeah.
really the idea of young Kang and adult Kang kind of just dealing with each other and trying to avoid your future and everything. And we even saw that back in the day when Heinberg was writing Young Avengers and Iron Lad. And
It's the OG. That's
Yeah.
I mean, that's the origin of our take for sure. We owe so much to Heinberg, and we owe so much to Busiek and Pacheco, and issue 7 of Avengers Forever. I think those two things are like the root of our Marvel origin story.
That's beautiful, man.
Those books are why we got in.
Yep.
That's excellent. So, well, we're talking still about Kang and Doom and everything, so maybe we should stick with this stuff before we get to Star Trek.
Sure.
And I have no problem with that, because I am so glad. I loved what you guys did in the previous Thunderbolts miniseries that spilled out of your Captain America event.
Mhm.
And and again, I just thought it was great. But yeah, Doomstrike is out, and we've got Bucky now. A lot of what happened in that miniseries informs this new side, story, which again, I know in your guys' hands, this is your own story. It happens to fall under One World Under Doom. Is that the name of the event? I hope I'm saying it right.
Yes. One World Under Doom.
As opposed to One Nation Under Doom. So yeah, because he's already got one of those.
Yeah,
Indeed. And now he has all the nations.
But no, this is great, and I love this. I love this team, and I'm psyched for the movie. But I'm really glad they gave you guys another bite of the apple. I would assume, obviously, because the movie is coming up, and this will dovetail into the movie nicely.
I think it's so here. This is what I genuinely think is interesting. Our first run on Thunderbolts World Strike, was designed to be a synergy for the film, like much more directly. We used a lot of the same cast. We know nothing about the movie, so it wasn't like we were like playing with the movie characters for any individual reason. It was more just we knew that there were some of them there. There was some interest in Marvel's side on making sure that it lined up with the movie cast a bit. So we leaned into that and found some great dynamics and really used that to bring, as you said, our story from Captain America, Son of Liberty, through Cold War, and then out of the Century game into Thunderbolts World Strike. It's all one Bucky Barnes saga. It's the Revolution saga. We've really been telling it since Devil's Reign Winter Soldier, and we'll be telling it until the last issue of Thunderbolts Doomstrike, which is, I think, fundamentally the end of our Bucky saga. We've sort of told all we have to say about the character, I think.
Okay.
But then they delayed the movie by like a year and a half. Yeah. So we put out Thunderbolts World Strike, and then there was no movie to synergize with. There was nothing to support the choices that were made there in terms of like turning people around and getting it to the movie. Mm-hmm. And so it sort of had to succeed on its own and be its own thing and live on its own, which is ideal for a comic. That's sort of what you prefer. So when they came back to us and said, hey, and we'd always planned on Doom becoming a central character in the book, starting in a second arc. That's why he's introduced in issue 4 of Doomstrike, or of World Strike, is that he's we wanted to have him become a real like ongoing foil for Bucky as that book continued,
or perhaps a team member.
Yeah, and so
say like their relationship was going to be a core of whatever came next, and then we get the call like, actually, we're doing this crazy little thing with Doom. How might that impact what you're cooking up? And it's like, oh, it works perfectly. Especially we were at the Marvel Summit, and when Ryan was kind of briefing everyone on the story, and it became really clear pretty quickly that like coming out of Doomstrike, or rather World Strike, he was like, that moment crystallized for Doom in a big way. Like, I can't allow myself to be be used. Right?
Yes.
Like, the end of that. And it was really great for Ryan. We've worked with him on Star Trek, but it was so cool for him to be like, no, that what you guys did really inspired this journey to kind of launch off. And he was very excited about the fact that we were going to be bringing Bucky kind of into this story and getting to continue that journey of not just rebels, but revolutionaries, the ones who are there not just to kind of fight Doom, but rather to burn Doom's fucking world down.
Yeah.
Right.
And I think that's the thing I'm really excited about this. And I think why it's sort of the capstone of the Bucky Barnes Revolution saga, right? When we found Bucky, he was a man without a mission. He very fundamentally been haunted by the mission that he'd been on forever. He'd been calling himself Winter Soldier for years, which is in and of itself kind of a bit of self-harm and trauma, because like that's like it's like being a murderer and then rolling around being like, I'm the murderer. And it's like, yeah, I mean, sure, but like there's other things that define, or like a brainwashed guy, and you're like, I'm the brainwashed. You're like, wow, man, that must really suck for you.
Really
like,
reclaiming that name
on your shoulder all the time. Like maybe you should find your own identity and not the one that was given to you all those years. And so we really wanted to take him on that journey of figuring that out. And that's what the Century game was built around, was showcasing all these elements that have created the 20th century and having Bucky be able to say, oh, I think I fundamentally, when I look at power, wealth, art, technology, what do I define myself against? It's like, I define myself with revolution. I want to be the person who overthrows. I want to be the person who makes something new. I want to be the person who I'm the punk. I'm the rebel. I'm the kick-ass. And so we were like, how do we take that guy and take him on this journey that eventually puts him in the chair of quite literally being a revolutionary? And so now, here at the end of that story, he's been calling himself the Revolution for a couple of years as a result of the events of the Century game and the objectives of his previous Thunderbolts team. But now here he is at the end of all of that with a real test, which is when you are a revolutionary, you are, as we say at the beginning of the thing, and this is a true quote, as Sergei Nechayev, the famous communist revolutionary, said, you become a doomed man. When you decide you're going to be a revolutionary, you have to recognize that you will die, probably, as part of your revolution. That most revolutionaries don't make it to the end of their revolution. And so, and if they do, they make it through fully changed by the experience. And so we said, all right, if that's what Bucky's going to go through, we got to really put him through it. And that's why issue 1 is what it is. That's why we did what we did to Shelbyville. Spoiler alert for anybody who's out there, but Bucky's hometown.
So sorry if you live in the actual Shelbyville. We got
rough.
Like texting
rough day for everybody in Shelbyville.
Yeah, rough one, guys. So sorry. There's a damn good reason for it, and it's going to have ramifications. And obviously, also with this new Thunderbolts, it was very cool to bring back that older team, right? A lot of people, if there was one complaint about our previous Thunderbolts run, it's the people who are like, well, where's my Thunderbolts? And it's like totally valid. We're doing something new, but now it's the return of Songbird. It's going to be, we're seeing a new Citizen V kind of crafting into things, and that role is just going to keep continuing. So it's really Bucky. It's kind of the final opportunity for Bucky to confront who he was, what he's done before, and try and synergize and synthesize and evolve through this crucible into the man that he really wants to be.
I think Thunderbolts 2 is kind of about Doomstrike 2 is about putting the team together. Doomstrike 3 is Thunderbolts versus Thunderbolts. And it is like, it's just the craziest, most intense action we could put together. It's sort of like, I think it's the most characters we've ever tried to put in 20 pages. Like, I think some people would say there are too many characters in the book.
Some people like Tom Brevoort.
but that's the thing. I think the point of that is in large part because when you want to take on a team book and want to take on the whole legacy of the team, you get those sort of Bendis style issues where it's just like, look, everybody's got to be here. If everybody's not here, we're not doing a thing. So maybe everybody only gets like 2 lines. Maybe we only get like thin characterization for everybody because that's all you have the time for. But they all need to be here, or they'll feel like we did something wrong. And I can really only thank Ryan North for killing Baron Zemo in issue 1 of One World Under Doom, so that we didn't have to deal with him. He was at least the one character we got to be like, he doesn't need to be here. He dead. And that was very good.
Well, I loved in that final issue of the previous miniseries where Doom is kind of used, and just Bucky saying, hey, welcome to the Thunderbolts, and the look on Doom's face is just priceless. But also, I always love when Victor Von Doom refers to the characters by their first names.
Yes.
And really, I just love this dynamic between Bucky and Doom, and that he calls him James and all that. And also in the previous thing, and this is, you guys have given so much great agency to Bucky, and Bucky has really become Marvel's Nightwing in that He was a sidekick for all these years, but he's an adult. We all, and certainly the modern audience recognizes him as an adult, but he needs to have his own stories. And you had that with, guess what, guys? We're taking the Red Skull down.
Yeah.
Wild. Now, guess what, guys? We're going after Doom. Fantastic. Great stuff. Great ideas. Great, interesting things.
Oh, thank you.
No, I'm very, very excited. Also, the tease, and again, the issue came out last week, so I don't mind saying it. Psyched to see the World War II Ghost Rider come back.
Dude,
that'll hilarious.
Ghost Rider 1944 is like one of the coolest characters that's been introduced in the Marvel canon in an age. Anybody who knows Collin's work knows we're big fans of like modern Marvel creations. Kamala Khan, Winter Soldier.
Sure.
When we can take these characters that are relatively new, or when we can create our own, like turning Sharon Carter into Destroyer, we really love to keep history moving, right? As far as Marvel is concerned, I think I always love Marvel because it feels like one big history. So I like to keep that history moving and like to make new calls. 1944 was such a beautiful place to say, of course there was a World War II Ghost Rider. Of course he absolutely hated Nazis. Of course he's living out there in Texas on a, in effectively a trailer park looking after like one young guy. Like I love the sort of simplicity of it. It reminds me of my grandfather who was a World War II vet. Like, I just think that there's such a brilliant simplicity to the concept that then lets you just play Ghost Rider out without having to do a lot of what you normally have to do with Johnny Blaze or any of these characters where they have to be like really tortured by the demon inside of them. Like Ghost Rider 1944 just shows up to kick ass. Like he's not such a melancholy version of the character, and it really lets you play him. He works great in a team because you don't need to go super deep on him. He can just have a blast. He can be there to kick ass, and then he can bail because he's
sometimes punching fascists is enough. Like,
Yeah.
what's his torture? Like, he doesn't need torture. He sees like, do you got a fascist around here? Great, I'm gonna fucking whip his ass. Like, great, 1-to-1, baby. Keep your life clean, everybody. Just punch Nazis.
All right. So, question. So, did you guys create Ghost Rider 44?
No. Phil Kennedy Johnson created him in his current Incredible Hulk run.
Oh my God! All right, and it's funny. I'm due to have a new talk with Phil, so I'll talk about that. But I thought for a second it was the Western Ghost Rider on a motorcycle. That's what I assumed.
No, it's Phil Kennedy Johnson's Ghost Rider. He introduced him recently in Hulk. He's one of the newest Marvel creations.
That sounds great.
And the cool thing is, there's a current book now that he's doing Hell Hunters, right? Which is the sort of World War II team book. Bucky and Ghost Rider 1944. They're old buds. They knew each other in World War II. You can read that story right now. And then next month, you can read that story in the modern era. And James, like, our books are in communication with one another. We're aware of what's going on. Phil knows us. We know him. We've known each other since we were at Boom and like starting on this. Hellhunter's it's a kick-ass book. And so it's this really great way for us to ideally share simultaneously sort of page space with one of our favorite writers and help elevate one of his ideas, but also at the same time allow for both of us to like our books to support one another and hopefully people who buy one buy the other.
That's great.
Always a thing for these like new team books. We just need, you need sales support. Like you need people to be out there buying.
Yeah, absolutely. Collin, I really appreciate you chiming in on the chat on some of these side. It's truly, no. This is great. I honestly, because and truly sometimes the guest doesn't see some of the stuff that's happening in the chat. No,
Jack,
nice.
we had a guy over here being like, I want to get into Star Trek. I'm just such a huge Babylon 5 fan. I'm not sure where to start. And I'm like, maybe fucking get on board.
My friend, just read our book. Which we're Babylon 5 fans too. I think it's all over the book. Come play. I think the water's warm.
That's so funny. I've been rewatching Babylon 5 on the side here and there when I'm not watching something new. I love that thing too. I was so thrilled a couple of years ago when Straczynski released his autobiography that I got to really like sit down and talk to him about I'm like, hey man, expect a lot of Babylon 5 questions. He's like, I got no problem with that. I'm like, all right, good deal. So, and that's obviously you guys with Star Trek with me. You know that.
One day we'll get to meet Straczynski and exactly. We'll just kind of like fall on our knees and be like, senpai, teach us. Like, man is incredible.
And then we'll fight him for taking over Captain America.
Yes, we hate him for taking over Captain America.
Honestly, if anyone had to follow us on that book, I'm really glad it was a writer that we could both just be like, well, I mean, we'll read it. Like it was like the only time where I was like, well, I can't get mad. Like I wouldn't be a writer if it weren't for J. Michael Straczynski. Like that guy taught me so much. It's like, sure, of course, take Captain America. Like, go, bud.
Yeah, and he's doing great.
My child.
Yeah.
But again, no, guys, your run on Cap was just outstanding. And again, I'm so glad you mentioned Sharon Carter as the Destroyer, because I really love that wrinkle as well. So no, that was great in your previous thought. I mean, and again, did that happen? Was that you guys making that move with Sharon, making her Destroyer, or did that happen?
1,000%.
And forgive me, that was in the event, right? That was in the Cap event.
Yeah.
Okay.
It was the whole run. We always knew it was where we were going from issue 1. It was part of the pitch from the very beginning. We love Sharon.
Yeah.
We love her relationship with Steve, but I think there's something a little complicated about her.
Sure.
It's always been complicated about her, which is that she's a firecracker of a character. She's in my opinion, she's like, of all the women at Marvel, she's the one who's the most likely to get into a bar fight. There's a few of them who are like that. She's the most like that. She's the most like, don't piss her off. She's just a hard edge.
Yeah, Natasha goes into a bar. If she's going to get into a bar fight, she knew she was getting into a bar fight as soon as she walked in. Yeah. Sharon's been drinking. Then someone nudged her, and she's like, "Man, it's been a while since I whooped someone."
Like she's
about her.
Yeah, she's so messy compared to Steve, and so we always thought it was like it's a bummer that whenever she suits up, it's always as an agent of the government. Like it's always as somebody who's like official, because that's not really her. Like that's not really who she is. Like maybe that's how she started, but the thing that she's learned over her course of her time with Steve is that that's really not who she is. That she's much more of a loose cannon, much more of a firecracker. And the reason she got into all this is because she loves punching fascists, because she believes in democracy, she believes in America, she believes in the sort of the sort of traditional classic context of like the neoliberal project, and she wants to fight for it with everything she has. And so when we always loved Destroyer, we always wanted to bring that character back in. And so knowing that we were going to go back to the original, Stan Lee's first character of the company, we were going to bring him in, we were going to give him a final story. And because otherwise I think he would have just been left on page forever. And it was like, let's give this character a final story, and then let's hand this legacy to somebody who needs it and who loves to destroy shit more than Sharon. And so it was like, that really feels like a great place to give that legacy to her, give her something that lets her have new story territory. And then I think Thunderbolts, both volumes are going to kind of show you that that's where she lives. I'm really excited for people to see what her context is in Thunderbolts Doomstrike 2. I like how she reacted to Doom's takeover. I really like what we're doing with her. It's a blast.
I keep blocking Collin when I show a cover. You'll forgive me, Collin. But how many? There you go. Attaboy. How many issues for this miniseries? 5. Okay, 5. Cool.
It's good 5, deal. and that'll be it for us. We're really not like, we knew this was going to be it. Like,
okay, and
as I said, I think we've kind of said everything we have to say about Bucky. I think we've gotten him to the end of the story we set him on. And so by the end of 5, we're really going to leave it all in the field. Like it's it's everything. I think if you mentioned like loving Doom and Bucky's relationship, issue 4 is, at least the script was called My Dinner with Doom. And it is quite literally like it's almost 20 pages of just conversation between these two guys.
Fantastic. Excellent.
So I think for people who really want to sink into that relationship, issue 4 is going to be a great bit of insight.
Bendis years ago said this on my show, and I agree with him. We've seen these guys punch each other and women many, many times. It's the conversations that we don't get to see. And I always say, especially when it comes to Doom and the various connections he has with the various other Marvel Universe people, it's been a long time since I've seen a good Doom Namor conversation. And there you go, boys. That's the reaction I'm looking for.
I'd kill to do that. We got to write Namor for like 3 seconds in Sentinel of Liberty, and it was so much fun. He's such a cool
we would love to do something with Namor, but we don't want to. We can only do so much of the same things Chris Cantwell does, and we love Chris, but he does such a good Namor. We're gonna let him own that for a while before we go scooting in.
All right, I understand. But
before we get our feet wet.
Jesus. So Jackson, just so you know, your mic's muted. If you wanted to do that, that's fine, but you just did. And I can try and.
Oh, it was because I was click. It was my keyboard was typing because I was trying to answer one of your chat guys. See, this is what happens when we get to the mix.
But it's all good, man.
Let's talk about Star Trek.
Yeah, man.
God bless you, boys, because I'm very excited. I mean, the seeds are already being planted, but coming in April, boom, the lore war, and great idea. Seriously, man. Again, for people who aren't, you're obviously reading and watching Star Trek because you're watching Word Balloon, and you know how much of a fan of Star Trek I am. But you guys have chosen this very small period of time in between the raindrops of the films and the various television shows, and managed to get this amazing group of Star Trek regulars, along with new characters that you've created as well. And you can tell people now, if they aren't currently watching, what is leading to the lore war.
Certainly, yeah. So obviously, if you haven't been reading Star Trek and its sister book, Star Trek Defiant, we're about 28 issues in, so there's quite a bit of stuff to catch up on. But the TLDR is effectively lore. So if you don't know, lore is Data's evil twin brother, roughly speaking. Lore has assembled something that we call effectively a reality bomb. It's built out of the fragments of the orb, of the Bajoran orb of destruction. And a good number of issues ago, he detonated it outside of time and space, which has created a reality-shifting destruction wave that has been slowly or quickly, depending on how you look at it, eating away at all universes. Now, this isn't simply a wave of destruction, it is a wave of rewriting, as Lore positions himself effectively as the new god of this cosmos. Lore is also capricious and small-minded and very self-centered. So how he has built this universe, how he has shaped it to his own liking, is very kind of specific to him, and how he's kind of built it. And what we're going to be following is our characters in effectively a Secret Wars style story, as they kind of find themselves in these new contexts without memories of who they were, only to find, as Cisco and his the most unexpected of allies come together in order to try and save this reality and return it to our beloved cosmos as it stands.
It's sort of as Collin said, it's Secret Wars for Star Trek, but I think it's also a really great sort of classic Star Trek dystopia.
Yes.
Star Trek is always built on this idea of hope and utopia and a world that people had to evolve into better versions of themselves to stay safe, to stay alive, to better and better the cosmos, as it were, right? And what this story asks is, what if we didn't? What if Lore put himself at the head of that, made everything about him, and forced everything into a box that looked like his? How would that stunt the growth of these characters? How would that stunt the growth of the universe? How would that stunt the growth of humanity? How would that change what the Federation was, what Starfleet means? What does Star Trek look like when it's a dystopia? And not a dystopia like the Mirror Universe, where it's all about everyone is their worst self and everything is about killing somebody else. Basically, humans are Klingons and Klingons are humans and never the twin. That's not really the point here. The point here is that he didn't have to do anything to people. He just had to impose his will on history. And in doing so, I'm trying really hard not to get political about this, by putting himself at the center of all things and putting his name on everything and making everything about him, how did that turn a world that previously was about everyone into a world where it was about no one? And then what do you do when you live under that kind of monochrome fascism. How do you live through it? How do you survive it? Can you survive it? Who do you become underneath it? And then how do you learn to wake up and fight it? There's a, I think very classically, there's not a lot of great instances of homegrown revolution in something like Nazi Germany. You just don't have it. You have order and you have complacency, and if you get out of line, you're out. That's how Lore runs his world. And so looking at a world where nothing can break away, and then saying, how do we tell a story about people breaking away? It feels very timely. It feels very appropriate. And it felt like a great way to summarize a lot of what Star Trek has taught us about standing for what's right, even when that thing that's right is purely theoretical. It's purely in your soul. It's purely in your memory. It's not something that you can hold on to. It's not something that you can point at. It's not a system that's standing up that needs you. It's just you standing up against it. But for better or for worse, Thunderbolts, Doomstrike, and Lore War have a lot of soul DNA in common, even if they have very little plot DNA in common.
I'm with you. Absolutely. Collin, that's great. You answered, and I was going to ask for aggressively reacting. That's okay. If the events of the nothingness in Lower Decks #3 was a tie-in to this event, and you said not directly, but in your mind, absolutely. And so really this event is just the Star Trek book and the Defiant book that Cantwell is doing. Is that right?
Lore War, yeah.
Yeah, for Lore War.
I just want to piggyback off that Lower Decks thing, though. It is actually incredible because the production design of the Nothing is the same design as our Lore Wave. It's just, great minds are like, this is how we go. And we go way back with Mike McMahon. We love Lower Decks. I mean, it's just an incredible show, obviously. So the fact that there was like, what if we do a story about people from alternate dimensions smashing into each other and like the kismet between the two. So obviously, we can't say anything officially, but I like to think that, yes, that is like part of the Lore Wave that kind of is getting like twisted up in time and popping in over there. Like 100%, baby. 100%.
Why not?
Well, as I've said a million times, if people like me are jonesing for more Star Trek in between the films and in between the streaming shows, good news, really. I mean, and I'll even go back before Collin and Jackson were writing this stuff when Mike Johnson was doing the Kelvin Star Trek stories too. And I told Mike that as well. No, I mean, really, all of you have been doing an excellent job in giving us new, fresh stories and coming up with new ideas. And really, yeah, no, it's every month, man. It's a pleasure to read. And I'm very excited for what's coming.
Thank you. They announced something a couple of days ago and it flew under the radar. So I want to, and I think I didn't know it was getting announced, so I didn't push it out there as much. But I want to make some noise about it because I can't believe it's happening again. And especially since we're talking about Lower Decks. So yes, this is a combo of Star Trek and Defiant, the same way that our initial event, Day of Blood, was. Right,
which was excellent, by the way, but keep going.
Storytelling, and then we brought it all together in Day of Blood. We've now done 2 more years of storytelling, and now we're looping them together into Lore War. But it wouldn't feel like a Star Trek event to me now without a Shax one-shot. Lower Decks had Shax's best day, which all came out of a joke we had in the writer's room that none of us had anything to do with Shax. He was on the team, but the only thing that he would be doing for the entire event was just killing Klingons with batlets. And we were like, well, we don't have page space for that. Can we just have a one-shot called Shax's best day where he's just doing that? And Heather, is just the kind of crazy to call Ryan North of all people and be like, hey, Ryan, do you want to write this one shot? And then lo and behold, he gets Eisner nominated for it. Right. So,
oh, that's great.
So as we came about to Lore War, we were building it out and we kept, and Shax actually has quite a role in Lore War. Shax has one of my favorite turns in terms of like, who does this character become in a world where the Federation doesn't exist, where Starfleet has a very different purpose. And where the Bajorans very specifically have a different purpose, and their history has been just vandalized brutally.
Obviously, if you're phrasing yourself as a god, who are the best worshippers in the Star Trek universe?
Yeah,
Well,
and what do you do?
don't you want the Bajorans on your side, or more specifically, kneeling before you?
Yeah. So we were like, all right, if we have Shax in that frame, that puts Shax into a really different context for our book. And so we have this beat near the end of the event, just before the end of the event, where we had this opportunity. We were like, well, there's just a really interesting bit for Shax in becoming self-aware. We'd really love to see what we could do with him. And it would really be terrible for him. So that really feels like Shax's worst day. And we just kept saying it, and Heather was like, don't make me do this again. And we were like, Shax's worst day, Shax's worst day. And lo and behold, mad woman she is, she called up Ryan North and was like, hey, Ryan, you want it? So we show up to the Marvel Summit, and Ryan's like, hey, so I hear I'm doing a Star Trek again. So
fantastic.
They just announced Shax's worst day coming as part of the Lore War event. I will say it just like everything in Lore War, it makes Day of Blood look positively tiny. It's Ryan fully removed from any kind of responsibility to continuity. It is beautiful. I'm so happy with it. I hope it wins the Eisner this time. I just think it's a great piece of work that he should be very proud of, and that we are very proud of, even though we had very little to do with it.
I hope McMahon appreciates what you guys have done with Shax, because truly it was such a brilliant stroke the last time we talked. And I'm like, that is great, because again, for people who may not be up to speed with what's happening in IDW, Worf started as Cisco's security guy on the Thesis. And then through a disagreement with Cisco and Starfleet, he grabbed the Defiant and started running. Great. Well, now we need a new security person, and you guys bring in Shax. And it's so great, because I liked Shax enough in Lower Decks, but all of a sudden it's like, wait a minute, now Shax is in like a dramatic Star Trek book, for a lack of a better word. And it's like, that is fantastic, man, because he is great, and he's a great character. And what you guys have all done, and including Ryan, with him is just outstanding. So again, I hope to God, McMahon, have you talked to McMahon about it and everything?
Oh, absolutely. In fact, it was his idea for us to put Shax in the book. We had originally wanted Mariner for the bridge crew. Mariner was going to take the place on the bridge crew that Lily Sato ended up taking. So Lily was sort of a gift to us from Mike, because it comes from Mike saying no to Mariner. And then we got on the phone with him and talked through, okay, who could we have? Because we want to have Lower Decks rep on this show, on this book. It's really important to us to have somebody from Lower Decks on this book, because the point of the book is to touch all of Star Trek. Like, if Section 31 had existed when we pitched this book, we would have put something from it like, regardless of whether or not we liked it, right? We would have taken something from it and put it in there. We do that across the board. Our book is non-judgmental when it comes to the origin of our ideas. What we're trying to do is take everything from Star Trek and knit it together into a beautiful tapestry. So we got on the phone with him. This was around the time season 1 was ending of Lower Decks. And we got on the phone with him and went through a whole run, because we've been friends forever. We went through the whole thing of what he was doing in season 2. And we said, okay, can we use Boimler? Who can we use? And he was like, you can't use any of my core 4 because they all have really key origin stuff that I'm going to play out over the book or over the show. So I can't, I don't want you to like, it would like mess up Mariner's origin if she was there, which now that we know her origin totally makes sense.
Yeah, please don't play with my main toys. And we're like, yeah, okay.
And so we said, like, who's available for us to use? And he said, well, any of the main bridge crew or Jennifer the Andorian. So you want Jennifer the Andorian, or you want anybody on the bridge crew? And I said, I don't really want Jennifer the Andorian, but I would love, I'd love one of your bridge crew. That sounds neat, because we could play them in a dramatic context. And he said, well, let me tell you about this DS9 episode we're doing in season 2. And he told us about like a year before it happened. Here's what we're doing with the show. I got Armin Shimmerman to come in. He brought the teeth, right? He told us the whole thing. We all geeked out about the fact that he was doing this DS9 riff. And we said at the time, we were like, oh, well, then we can use Shax. And Shax, you've already set up all this context for him. And he was like, yeah, that's great. Go for it, as long as he's back on the as long as he's back on the Cerritos by the time the book is done, he can totally serve that. And so that's what we did. Like it was, he was key to giving us permission to do that in the first place. And then during the writer's strike, when we were all out here, walking around all day, every day, we were often walking with Mike and got to talk about, we would talk about like, oh, here's what we're doing. And he would tell us what he was doing and we'd find ways to coordinate it. So we've always kept a pretty open line of communication, not just with all of Star Trek, but very much with Mike specifically, because again, we just go back.
The Fake Nerd Podcast, I'll have his long comment and I'll follow with his short comment. He says, Star Trek and Defiant are my favorite ongoing titles. I'm so excited to read the Lore War. Hope to the prophets that the series will continue for several more years to come. Yeah, is Lore War your guys' swan song, or?
I think what happens after Lore War has to stay after Lore War. We're gonna like. There's cool stuff coming.
Okay,
we can't talk about it yet.
No, that's fine. But we just wanted to make sure that this isn't. Of course, and you guys know. I mean,
suffice to say, we have more Trek coming.
Excellent.
IDW loves us. Star Trek Actual loves us. We love Star Trek. They can't chase us away,
guys. I'm telling you, even prior to Star Trek and Defiant, what you guys were doing with the rest of Kirk's 5-year mission, again, unbelievable stuff. And truly, I've loved every minute of it, and have spent a lot of my own out-of-pocket money on your guys' Star Trek stuff in particular.
I mean, those hardcover year 5, the massive omnibuses for that are so cool. We got a little birdie told us there might be some more hardcover projects in the works. So like, I'm sorry, but we won't be stealing your money, but IDW will be stealing more of your money because your bookshelf demands it.
I do want to. I saw one of the comments. I do want to note this. I don't know that it's been announced yet, so I can't announce anything. But what I can say is, I've seen from inside. They asked if they say they fly the Theseus in Star Trek Online every day.
Yeah, I didn't know. I didn't know it was on the game.
It is. It's been in the game for quite some time. It's awesome. We have a really great relationship with the people over at Star Trek Online, and have for some time. Obviously, they brought Bright Eyes from Star Trek Year 5 in. He was a quest giver NPC for a while. Like, we've done a lot of lacing with STO to make sure that they feel like part of us and that we feel like part of them. They have a new ship that is a callback to something that we did a long while back that I have been geeking out about. So I can't say anything more than that. I'm really excited for people to see this, but there is a new thing from our context coming into Star Trek Online soon. When we got the design, I jumped up and down. I was quite excited. It's pretty. If were I able to have time to play Star Trek Online, and trust me, I really wish I did. If were I to be a player, this would be the ship I would fly. I just think it's a beauty. I'm very excited for it.
Couple questions from the chat. James wants to know, what are some sci-fi franchises that need more love that you can recommend? He's a Gundam and Farscape guy, and he's going to start. Well, excellent. You're going to start Stargate, Shroon. That's excellent. Might I add The Expanse to that list? Definitely check that out if you haven't already.
The Expanse is incredible.
Farscape, baby. Farscape is, man. We've almost worked on Farscape so many times at this point.
I just got the hardcover that we backed on.
Bring it back up, man. No, it's okay. Yeah, I'm zooming in so you can show it.
So they just did these hardcovers that collected the whole like DeCandido O'Bannon runs and did these on Kickstarter as part of a thing that also backed this 25th anniversary.
Zipping in again. Boom. Wow.
It has new stories by a bunch of writers and artists. We were announced as part of the lineup when they did this. We were supposed to be in this book because we're gigantic Farscape nerds. And our story didn't get approved until too late. And so we missed the boat on the pitch, which was a bummer. So we ended up not making the book, which is just very, very sad for all of us. I think, it was just a logistical problem.
You guys must have been. Were you guys little kids when Farscape was happening, or I was going to say
we're not that. We were in high school.
I was middle.
Okay, not that bad. All right.
I think I was in middle school when it started.
I distinctly remember. So we didn't have cable in my house.
Okay.
But the gym in our apartment complex did. So late Friday nights, I would go to the gym and I would sit on an exercise bike, not using it, of course. this physique does not need to exercise. And I would just sit and pretend to use the gym as I watched Farscape. And every people would be like, "What is happening on this television?" And I'd be like, "You can shut up! I'm watching my space Muppets."
Come on, man. Absolutely. And really just John Crichton's whole attitude of being in space was so real world. And just every now and then he'd just drop a sci-fi. Yeah, all right, ease up, Captain Kirk. I don't know what the hell I'm doing here, but
I may have based too much of my personality on John Crichton. It is true.
I love that show.
We certainly put a lot of our love for Farscape into our Guardians of the Galaxy run. I think if anybody wants to see what we did, what we love about that, they can go to Guardians of the Galaxy, which is sort of it's like a sad version of our love for Farscape. I'm in terms of like something to get into right now that I would be that I think like not enough people watch. There's a show on Apple TV called For All Mankind. It has a lot of the crew from Star Trek DS9 work on it, and a lot of the crew from Battlestar Galactica work on it. It's a very grounded take on the idea of a Star Trek, of how we evolve into the kind of society that has bases on other planets and spaceships that can go to them, and how the politics of that work and how they work. But it all starts in a like basically a historical twist on 1960, where the Russians make it to the moon first. Yep. And because the Russians make it to the moon first, time changes and everything about our history adjusts itself, because the way that the space program functions is just fundamentally different. We don't give up on it the way that we did in actual history, where NASA gets defunded by the 80s. That didn't happen in this universe. And so instead, every season of For All Mankind takes a full decade, the 60s, the 70s, the 80s, the 90s, and so forth, and reinterprets that decade through the lens of this alternate history. And so while the first season feels very much like a kind of slightly alt history version of what's the classic 60s set?
The Right Stuff.
Yeah, thank you. The Right Stuff.
Oh, sure. It is an alternate history of The Right Stuff.
Feels like an alternate history version of The Right Stuff. By the time you get to season 4, we're almost modern, and the whole world is different, and we have like space bases on asteroids, and it's all about like much bigger, crazier ideas. The way that show evolves its alternate history and builds it out and builds a science fiction show that feels so fundamentally real, I just think is stellar. I'm an enormous fan of it. If I could write for any show, I would want to write for it. I just think it's worth anybody who loves sci-fi. It's really worth your time.
I agree. I'm a massive Ron Moore fan. Everything he's done, Carnival and Outland as well, Outlander rather. But yeah, especially all the Star Trek and Galactica stuff. And yeah, and I mean, you know, my good friend Rob Burnett, who's a great YouTuber and as well, and he's like, really, For All Mankind could be the Star Trek prequel as far as how things, you know, develop and the way they look at everything. It's it's excellent. I absolutely love it, and it's very, very plausible. And from where it starts, and yeah, man, hey, the space race was really a product of the Cold War, and it's kind of, well, what if the Cold War never ended, and we're still kind of dealing with it even into the 90s, and we'll see about the next season that finally gets us in the 2000s.
Well, and then they also announced that they're going to do a spin-off series called Star City that's going to be about the Russian perspective for the whole show. So
that's cool.
So they're going to go back to the 60s and do the show from the Russian perspective as well. So you get a completely different take on how that stuff works. And I guess it's going to like dovetail into what they're doing on the core show.
That sounds great.
I think is really, really interesting.
No, I'm a massive fan of really Apple in general. They very quietly are like such a great streamer, and there are so many great things on it. I'm a massive fan.
I'm a huge fan of Silo. If folks aren't watching Silo, they should check it out. if it's your watch an episode or two, if it's your jam, you'll know immediately. If it's not, you can bail. But if it is your particular yum yum, like it's yum, 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 yum.
Would you guys want to do TV or movie writing eventually? Is that something you'd like to do? Again, taking nothing away from your comic work, and again,
It's funny. James, the media man, sir, asked way back up in the chat, can you guys talk about your origin and how you got into this stuff? It's like, look, I honestly, there are a dozen different podcasts, other podcasts where we have gone into this extensively. So,
okay.
But we come from Hollywood. We come from film school. We met in film school. I hated him. He liked me just fine. But we kind of fell in love with each other's writing and each other's work. And coming out of film school, that's what we did. We were TV Hollywood guys. We're those kind of like young, we graduated and immediately got a movie set up, and it was all fun and games and awesome, but we were 22 and had absolutely no idea what we were doing. It was a very exciting time, but that's where we primarily did dancing for the first decade or so of our career. But you get punched in the guts enough by Hollywood when, when the door got open to comics for us, suddenly it was like, wait a minute, you write something and it comes out 3 months later and your check clears and then people like it, as opposed to spending a decade being like, I write TV. And they're like, what? And you're like, fucking nothing you have ever seen. It gets really exhausting.
Yeah. So it's interesting because we took this sort of journey from film. It was really features, right? We were in the feature film game for a while.
Okay.
We sold a movie to Fox right out of college, and then we were in development on that for a year, and then that movie didn't happen, and then we were in development on 2 things at Universal, and then those didn't happen, and then we were talking to Disney, and then that didn't happen, and we just kept like near missing on a lot of projects or developing for these bigger companies, and then not having the thing happen, which is that's most of Hollywood. You do 50 things and one of them happens.
Yep.
Maybe, right? And that can be really, really tough because also a lot of that's on spec. So you have a day job at the same time. I was cutting movie trailers. Collin was working first in film schools and then at the USC Games School. We were building other careers, and then comics really came around and kind of like shifted that all up for us. We started doing a lot of comics. By the time that we were doing like 6 a month, we could pay our rent, we could live our lives. So we went full time a few years ago. And that gave us the freedom to start looking back at our film and TV game and being like, what could we do more of there? And so obviously a big thing for us has been making sure that, we don't put all of our eggs in that basket, because it's a really rough basket. We prefer comics in some ways, and we really prefer. We're also working in video games. I can't say on what yet, but like we have a big video game thing we've been working on for several years that I think is going to get announced like next month. So really psyched to finally get to be able to talk about that. But that also changed our lives, just because video games, while also unstable in its own way, is just it's a totally different medium, and it's much more regular than either comics or film and television. It's a full-time job all year round. Like, it's just a different vibe. So that all gave us a chance to then start looking at film and TV again. So over the course of the last couple of years, we produced a few new specs. We got a new manager we're at this big company called 3 Arts, who you'll see their logo at the end of a bunch of TV shows. They have taken us out for things. We've talked to Ron Moore about doing stuff with them. We've talked to we just set up a thing at a major studio that I can't talk about yet, but when we do, I can't wait for people to hear about it. It's so cool, and I can't believe we get to do it. But that, like, we're show running, like, that's like ours.
Hey, that's great, guys. Well done.
Yeah. So like we're always, our eyes are always on film and television. And truthfully, like, if we don't eventually write one episode of Star Trek someday, I will be very sad. Like that. I honestly like don't even care what show it is. I don't care where the context is. I want to write one produced episode of Star Trek. Somewhere, someday, somehow. We got really close to Strange New World season 1. Like, really close. So, like, I hope someday.
Like when you're in line in Disneyland, and then the line
cut off, like, right.
Like, hey, I was the next on there. Like, oh, sorry.
Yeah.
Right.
We're really hopeful that someday we'll get that shot to show what we can do there, because I think that that's I think that's a value that we have to the franchise, and I hope someday that they'll give us that shot, because it's it's one we're working towards. But until then, we're just going to kind of keep making our own luck and building our own spaces and seeing what we can do in that way. And that's always something we're looking at.
Well, I mean, I Fraction and Rucka and them, when they've had their TV and film things happen, they always come back. So I expect you guys, when it is announced and everything, and it's up and running, or right before it comes on, you guys are welcome to come back. You know that,
John. We always have a blast with this podcast. We'll be here.
Oh, it means a lot.
Yeah.
Thank you. That really means. And Stanley's being very nice. He's like, oh yeah, John should be their advisor for Star Trek. Yeah, me and Rob Burnett, man, we'd be happy to take those jobs and help right the ship in the areas where we felt. Yeah.
It's the only thing about us. We don't need consultants. We're too big nerds as it is. We are each other's consultants. Like it's the one place where Star Trek is like, we're encyclopedic. It's the only thing I think we're truly geniuses at. But like at this point, there's not a bit of Star Trek lore we're not. It is.
We don't like to argue with like our licensors. We don't like to argue with our editors. But like occasionally they're like, well, this is actually how dilithium works, and we're like, bitch, no. Like I got 5 episodes, and I fucking appendix this, like cross-reference. This is how it, and then they don't like that much. But it's like,
hey, man,
the only franchise in the world where you really get into like astrophysics arguments on the regular.
Yeah,
that's terrific. Oh my god. Oh, that's funny. All right, Fake Nerd disagrees with me. Thinks no one needs Rob Meyer Burnett consulting on Star Trek. I always say Rob is a chess master to my student capacity in Star Trek, and I've been watching it longer than Rob, man. I mean, I remember at 4 years old, my parents having Star Trek on in the last season of the original series, and when I was a little baby in '69. So yeah, I remember that very well on my giant color TV, or giant at the time, all of 19 inches. But yeah.
I really I also want to say I saw a comment from our bud TJ on asking about Principles of Necromancy.
Yes,
and just to plug his podcast too, Sons of Mjolnir, great podcast. We've been on it a few times, and they if you want to get that origin story, TJ's gotten us into that really extensively in the past. So we have a creator-owned book from last year called Principles of Necromancy. We're really proud of it. Horror title. Was the artist Eamon Winkle was a new talent who was up for some big award, or he's up for the Russ Manning Award at the Eisners last year. I really just think is like a generational talent, and he's just getting started. We finished that book at issue 4, and we're looking to continue it on. The plan is to continue it. Right now, it's all in the hands of the publisher. There's just like legal stuff that needs to get sorted out, I think, on their side that has nothing to do with us or the book or any of the other stuff. So we're waiting for the green light there. But anybody who's like excited about Principles, who picked up Principles, or who hasn't read Principles and wants to get that in trade, I'm seeing if I have a trade. I do.
Oh, cool. Zooming in again.
There you go. Check out. No, that's not. Next time I do this, I'll have the trade actually ready. There we go.
Don't worry, buddy.
So if you want to check out Principles of Necromancy, it's now available from Magma Comics, wherever comics are sold. Really proud of this book. It's a heck of a thing. And if you do want to check it out, just know that it is still volume 1. We are going to be doing more. It's just going to only happen in the time that we have. In the meantime, we have a couple of other creator-owned things that we're cooking up this year that I think are really exciting. So stay tuned for more on that.
And for what it's worth for the plugs, for fans who are maybe newer fans of us and haven't been around for the entire 15-year ride, our very first creator-owned book, Joyride, which is a punk rock teenage Star Trek, because who would ever let us actually write Star Trek, which we did with Marcus Toe, is getting reissued. Boom is doing a bunch of reissues of classic stories, and so it's the entire 12 issues collected into one collection. It fucking rips, man. It's our punk rock party anthem as they strike, as a bunch of kids bail on a shitty Earth and strike off to party across the stars. We absolutely love it. For folks who
for fans of like Star Trek Prodigy or Skeleton Crew, this is the story that those stories, I mean, like birthed out of. I have no idea if any of those people ever read our book. there's an
Well,
enormous amount.
Our book did come first.
There's an enormous amount of DNA in both shows that I think they share with Joyride, but Joyride's an original universe. It's totally wacky. It's a blast. I think people really enjoy it. So definitely go check that out when that omnibus comes out later this year.
Sounds good. One more Marvel book I really wanted to talk about, and that, of course, is Power Man Timeless.
Yeah.
And I read that one shot, which was really great that you did. Was it 2 years ago, guys, that you did the
Almost.
Yeah.
About a year and a half ago, yeah.
All right. So explain to everybody where Luke Cage is in the timeline and what's going on with him.
So, year and a half ago, Timeless. We introduce a far, far, far future where things have gone terribly, terribly wrong. Khonshu, the patron of the Moon Knight, has won. He has taken over the all of Earth. He has effectively turned all of Earth into his worshippers. A little bit of a preview to that lore war stuff. And one hero stands against it. The only person who was able to make it through all of these purges and who has effectively taken all of the powers that are available to be taken. These powers that you can actually just like get by physically achieving them. Things like the blood of the Hulk, the power of the Sentry in the Void, and of course the Iron Fist, which can be punched out of the heart of the current Iron Fist. Luke Cage has taken on all of these things, and really we've turned Power Man into a very literal statement. He is a man wielding all of these Marvel powers. He's the, quote, master of the living weapons. And in that one shot, he stood against the Moon Knight of that era, who it turns out was Danny Rand, his best friend, and these two best friends fight it out at the end of the universe. Luke uses all of his strength and all of his power to smash through the very heart of this celestial version of Khonshu, who is sort of like made manifest and used all of Earth and the moon and all of this to turn himself into this, celestial style super god. Luke destroys that and saves that future from that god. But in so doing, pays the punishment, which is that he is then thrown back in time through universes and finds himself reappearing in the current Marvel timeline. Flash forward a year and a half. Everyone's forgotten about that issue. Whoops. A year and a half later, Power Man Timeless kicks off with Luke quite literally reappearing in space above Earth, effectively like his power set. The Hulk cannot die, so he is being re-energized and reconstructed up there, and is now in a world that doesn't need him or want him. This world has a Luke Cage. In this world, Danny Rand has just died. There's no threat that he's going to become the Moon Knight. This is not this Power Man's past. This is a new place. There's nothing for him here. And so the story is about what adventure he finds, what purpose this purposeless man finds in this new universe. And we use that as an opportunity to tell a story in the solar system around Earth. So for fans of our Star Trek who like it when we like use real science and real ideas to like tell stories about the solar system, Power Man Timeless is a big part of that. We're going to go to pretty much every planet in the solar system and encounter the secret celestial stuff that has been dug in and has been living there since the beginning of time. It is a big, epic science fiction sort of superhero story. But at its heart, truthfully, it's a fight book. It's like Dragon Ball. This is a book about the most powerful superhero we could create against the most powerful supervillain we could create, a guy named Aeon the Knife.
Excellent.
Who is effectively the genetic messiah long prophesized by the Inhuman genetic experiment. And yeah, Bernard Chang is doing the art on it. He's doing some stuff that is incredibly innovative and interesting. Aeon wields a blade so sharp, he's able to cut through comic pages themselves. So we're just doing some really wild, fun stuff in the book. And please, everybody go check it out. Limited
series ongoing?
Limited, solicited for 5. I think it's only going to go for 4. Truthfully, not that many people are reading it. If I'm going to be just totally straight with you, this is not a book that a lot of people are reading. I would really, really like it if more people read it. I think it's worth reading. I think it's a hell of a book. I think it's useful to read Timeless first.
That's what I was going to say. Absolutely. Yes.
If I'm being honest.
Yes.
And I think the year and a half break there kind of like created a bit of a cadence problem for the book. but I'm really, really proud of what we're doing with it. I think it's going to be a really beautiful thing by the time it's done. We're just finishing it up now, and I really think that what Bernard is pulling off on this book is the kind of thing you don't see at Marvel all that often. It's like really different. It's almost got like a Frank Miller vibe, like a Frank Miller in his prime. Like it has this super kinetic energy. The design work is incredible. The imagination is epic. So while I completely understand that it's not like everybody's flavor, and it's certainly hard to like pick up a book where you're like, oh, and it's baked into this thing from a year and a half ago that maybe you didn't read. I really hope people will take a shot on it. While it's kicking around. It's a weird little experiment. We're very, very thankful to Marvel let us do it at all. Truthfully.
Well, I imagine it will be when it's traded paired with the first story from a year and a half ago.
Yes.
And when I asked the guys, hey, all right, I know NYX, I know Star Trek, and I know Thunderbolts. Anything else? And Jackson's like, yeah, we're doing this Power Man thing. I'm like, excellent. And again, I went to Marvel Unlimited, found the first issue from a year and a half. It's a great story. And everyone, listen, if you're a Power Man fan, you need to read this. If you're a Luke Cage fan, because even it's kind of fish out of water, but not really, based on the fact of the way that Luke is set up in that original story. But it's still Luke Cage. I mean, this is very much Luke Cage handling something different based on the circumstances of the first story. But it really is great. And man, really the first book from a year and a half ago, yeah, it broke my heart because and also when Jason Liu and Marvel decided to kill off Danny Rand, it bummed me out. So no, I'm very interested to see where this story goes, and I'm sorry that it's only going to be a couple issues, but again, you guys kill on short runs and long runs, and you really do. And truly, man, that Thunderbolts previous story of them taking down the Red Skull was great. I mean, you guys, you know what you're doing. You guys know what you're doing.
Thank you, and I want to make it clear. I'm not complaining about sales. Ultimately, like I had somebody come at me on Instagram last week about this with NYX because we announced that NYX was ending at 10, and somebody came at me about this, and I thought it was really interesting. He was like, "Look, like truthfully, it's just because the book's not very good. And if you just listen to sales and you listen to the fans, you'll know that nobody's talking about this book, and it's not really good." And what I said back, and I really mean this, is that the last thing we will ever do as creators is listen to sales. I don't think that is a good way to make story. I don't think it's a good way to be proud of your art. I don't think it's a good way to build legacy. I think it can result in success, and I think that there are people who are very good at it. We are not. Every time that we have tried to listen to sales, we've tried it. We were young men. We've tried to figure that vibe out. Every time we've tried to do that, it's blown up in our face. It is not the way that we tell story. At this point, and some of that comes from all that time in Hollywood where you're just constantly falling on your own face, right? The reason why we do this is because we love to do it and because we really can't do anything else. Because when you put Collin and I in a space together, we tell stories. That's our origin. Our origin is we were locked in a car together for 4 days and we had to write a screenplay. That's just who we are. So if if we sit around and go, oh God, we're not on the top 10 on the bleeding pool this week, we'd be killing ourselves. Because at the end of the day, sales is not a barometer of quality. Sales is a barometer of popularity.
Right.
And most of the work that I am a huge fan of, the work that made me who I am, the work that I engage with on the daily, is not terribly popular work. It is niche work that spoke to me in a time that I really needed it. And so everything we do, we really hope is something that speaks to someone when they really needed it. I've had people already come up to me and say how much Power Man Timeless has spoken to them, how much that sort of search for purpose means, how much that book felt like it was written by somebody who really knew what they were going through. Like
for everyone who's been like kind of for everyone who's been poo-poo on NYX or being frankly rude about being canceled, there's been another person who's been like, look, this is the book that I've always wanted. This is the book that respects Krakoa in the way that I needed. This is the book that sees me as a queer person within this space. Like we can't, like, Lord knows, we'd love to have a massive breakout success, and we've got some stuff in the hopper that we're feeling very confident about.
Well, and we did with Batman Beyond New Year. Batman Beyond New Year was like one of the highest selling books the year it came out. Like that book was a gigantic seller. It's not like we haven't had commercial success.
It's not the point.
It's just not what we do. Yeah.
And that's something that we did learn from Hollywood is if you start chasing trends, by the time you get there, the trend is over.
The trend is over. Yep.
All you can do is write. All you can do is tell stories that are authentic to you and pray that they resonate with people. It's one of the reasons that I think people are going to be seeing a lot more creator-owned stuff from us. If you're picking up our creator-owned work, you're picking it up because you want to see what our vision is, not because you want to see if we're miswriting the character that you love. So, like, I think it's going to be a really exciting kind of a future for us. And yeah.
All right, Mason. Last question from Mason. Have you talked about Outsiders yet? No. Love that series. Was it always going to be an homage to Planetary?
Of course. That was its core origin. Was that we, as Planetary is my favorite book of all time.
Yep.
I can't help it. I just think it's.
Come on.
I just think it's. And talk about niche work. Like, yes, it sold at the time, but now so many people don't even know that book exists.
Of course.
You talk
Blows
to
our
modern-
fucking minds every time we're like, so they're like, wow, it seems like I don't, seems like I love Outsiders, but it seems like there's stuff I don't know. It's like, well, surely you've read Planetary.
People are like, I don't know what Planetary is. And I'm like, I don't know
Like,
what planet do you live on? But that's the trick is that that book was asked the origin story of it. We've gone over this in other podcasts, so we'll do it very, very quickly. But effectively, Ben Abernathy, who was at DC at the time, had worked with us on Neo Year, and it had been a huge success. And so they came to us and said, anything you want. What do you want to write? And we gave them 5 pitches, and every single one of the pitches was something they already had in the hopper. And they were like, oh, we can't do that. Oh, we can't do that. Oh, we can't do that. And I was like, okay, well, what do you guys need? What book do you want? Because obviously it's none of our ideas because you're already doing them. So like, what can we build for you? And he said, well, we don't know what to do with Luke Fox or Kate Kane. We can't get either of them to get in a book that is selling, and we don't really know what to do with them. So if you have an idea for Batwing and Batwoman, maybe put them together on a team, that would be really cool. And it took us about a year. We basically spent about a year just kicking ideas around in the background while we were very busy on other projects, and talked about what it would look like and how we would bend these characters into shape and what they could mean to each other and how we would build it. And is it a spy book? Is it an Agents of the Bat book? Is it a military adventurism book? Like, what kind of book is it? And ultimately, we kept pitching books that weren't the kind of thing we write. Like, we're not really military writers. We're not really sci-fi writers. Like, we can do it, but it's not our core. And we were trying to figure out how to. And you don't want to just do another Bat superhero book because that's the thing that hasn't been selling. So like, no version of that you do is going to do a lot better unless you land like the greatest artist of all time, because that'll, greatest artist of all time will always move a book.
Sure.
So we were like, who knows what that's going to be? Let's talk about books we love that have 2 characters at the center or 3 characters at the center that let you do isolated individual great issues of comics that tell you a whole story in 22 pages and give you a great framework for how to tell these stories. And it struck us like a lightning bolt one day when we were talking about it, that the book we were talking about was Planetary. And we said, well, there's no way they'll ever let us sequelize Planetary. That would be insane. Like, the hubris of doing that in and of itself is crazy. But then the more we talked about it, the more we realized it really had something to say about it. And that it was a great opportunity to use the framework of Planetary to talk about how you write in big 2 universes and because Planetary is inherently meta. It's about a century of storytelling and how and storytelling influenced all the stories we were telling. We said, well, can we do that just for the DC universe? Unpack a lot of the weird subtext of the DC universe and make it text. Is that something they'll let us do? Turned out Ben was the editor on Planetary at the end of Planetary. So
no idea.
Yeah. So when we pitched it to him, we're pitching the editor of Planetary on a Planetary sequel. He's going to see this coming a mile away and kill it. So we hit it. We pitched the book like it wasn't Planetary, and then got up to a point where we were about to be like, and then the Planetary guy shows up and he cut us off and he's like, guys, you're pitching me Planetary? And we said, yeah. And he goes, I've been waiting 15 years for somebody to have the balls to do this. Yeah.
Oh, thank God. Oh, that's great.
And greenlit us on the spot. And we were supposed to have 12 issues. We got 11. because they were launching All In and Absolute, and they didn't want to launch the last issue the same time as they launched the first issues of all these other books. So they curtailed the run at the very end by an issue, which was kind of frustrating, but like not bad. It worked out. We were able to do what we wanted to do. We sort of had an experimental issue that we were going to do that was going to be kind of a comment on like data pages and text pages and how novel forms have been taking over comic books. And we sort of just took that and said, we don't get to do that one, and collapsed the rest of the plot, and it worked out fine.
Have they traded your run?
The first trade is out. Trade is out. Second trade isn't out yet. I will say the first trade has a printing error, which I'm a little bummed about. So there's a line missing at the end of the first trade. So if you get the first trade and you're like, it seems like the last line doesn't drop, come find me at a con. I'll write it into the book, and we'll just physically edit the book on side, and we'll make it work.
Amazing.
And we do. Who knows if we'll ever actually do this? But we do make the joke that we want to just self-bind some copies of all of our single issues we have into a planetary guide. So hey, maybe if you find us at a convention next year, you'll be able to hand buy one of our handmade faux planetary guides.
Hilarious.
That'd be fun.
That's awesome, boys. Way to go! You're killing it. I'm so happy that you came back. You're welcome back. Hopefully sooner than later, and we'll talk about maybe Lore War as it's happening. And sorry, Collin. Again, I'm blocking out Collin as I show up.
I hate my own face. So this is the horror.
No. Good face. It's a good face. NYX out already. Thunderbolts Doomstrike has begun. And hey, jump on Power Man Timeless. It's really a great ride. And really reach back for that previous issue that sets it up and everything. Great stuff. As always, Collin Kelly, Jackson Lanzing, always great to talk to you boys. Thank you so much for coming back, and all the best.
Thanks, man.
Thanks.
You know it. I'm gonna next show for Word Balloon is probably gonna be Thursday night, and we'll do a checkup on all of the TV shows and movies that we're watching and streaming, and that'll be the next episode of Word Balloon Live. Until then, everybody stay safe, stay happy, stay healthy.